Okay, so for today's discussion, it is about eating and sleep wake disorders. So this is our outline for today. So with this one, we're going to be discussing the major types of eating disorders. So there are a lot, aside from what is discussed here. You have to really read the DSM-5 in order to see the other types of eating disorders. And then, of course, what are the causes of eating disorders, the treatment for eating disorders, and obesity. Now, obesity, although it's not an eating disorder per se, it's not a psychological disorder. This is going to be tackled along with the topic because of the fact of its impact in the health of people. So it's just like the suicide topic and the mood disorders. Now, after that, we're going to be discussing the sleep wake disorder, the major dysomnias, and some parasomnias. And just like with the eating disorder, you have to read the DSM-5 TR in order to explore other disorders in this particular cluster. And then lastly, we are going to be talking about the treatment of sleep disorders. Okay, so these are our focus questions. What are the features of anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder? What are the factors that contribute to the development of eating disorders, and what are some treatments for eating disorders? Aside from that, we are going to be discussing what are the causes and treatment for obesity, and then what are the features and treatment for sleep wake disorders. Okay, so to give us an overview for the major types of DSM-5 eating disorders, we have anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa. So the two disorders have severe disruptions in eating behavior, and their main features are as follows. So first off, they have weight and shape disproportionate influences on their self-concept. So they really have problem with how they view their bodies and their weight as well. So even though they are already at a very unhealthy weight, and also body very thin body image, or very thin physical body, they still feel that they have to lose weight. So they have problems with really accepting the reality in terms of how they look at their bodies. And then they also, both of them have extreme fear and apprehension about weight gain. And then this particular disorder have a strong sociocultural origins, particularly by the Western, especially by the Caucasian race, emphasis on thinness. Okay. In addition to this, this is a relatively new disorder, which is the binge eating disorder. Now, with binge eating disorder, the difference of this disorder is that it has a fewer cognitive distortions about weight and shape. So they really don't have any problem with their body shape and their weight. However, they have problem with their eating behavior. So they do binges, or they would eat a lot and then they would try to purge it out. So we'll talk about it more later. And then on top of this, we are also going to be talking about obesity. Now, as I've said earlier, obesity is not something that is considered a psychological disorder per se, but it is a problem in the physical health, or uh, just like um, just like suicide. It's a public health concern. This is because the rates of obesity is increasing, and although we only have the US statistics here because our textbook is US based, you can also see a lot of people being overweight and being obese here in the Philippines, particularly after the pandemic or the height of the pandemic, wherein everyone was just at home, and um, a lot of us have been eating takeouts during that time. So that is a pretty serious problem in the Philippines as well. All right, so we have here the BMI chart. So we'll talk about it more after we have discussed the other disorders. Okay, now with the bulimia nervosa, this is the overview of the condition. So the main feature is the binge eating. This is the hallmark of bulimia nervosa. Um, so aside from bulimia nervosa, this binge eating feature is also seen in binge eating disorder. So when we binge eat, usually we eat a lot of food in a discrete period of time. So pretty much this is the behavior that we're seeing in mukbang videos. So I'm not sure if you're a fan of those. Definitely I'm not a fan of those because the videos promote very poor eating habits, and yeah, it promotes this type. There's a big factor that it can promote this type of behavior. And then the eating is perceived as uncontrollable, and then after eating they would feel shame, guilt, or regret eating that large amounts of food, or sometimes they would be eating because they feel ashamed, they feel guilty, or they feel regretful about some things. So it really depends on what causes them to behave in such manner. And then the binge eating may be hidden from family members or friends as well. There are cases where in the person who is it's not social anxiety per se, but there are cases wherein the person would eat inside the comfort room cubicle because they feel ashamed of how they eat. They feel ashamed that they eat that a lot of food and they don't want to be judged for it. And then usually with binge eating, the people who would engage in this behavior would consume foods that are high in calories, so they are not that nutritious, and then they are more or less fattening. Okay, and then after binge eating, they would engage in compensatory behaviors. So, and this is because, as I mentioned earlier, some of them would feel very ashamed or very guilty of how they eat. So they would do that behavior most of the time. And then the most common thing that they do to make up for the binge eating is through purging. Now, with the purging method, they would do self-induced vomiting. Now, with the self-induced vomiting, um, dahil wala tayong Tagalog equivalent ng word na yon, ayan, dadalukitin niya yung lalamunan niya, so that, ayun, para magsuka siya. And there are also some people who would use diuretics, yung pampaihi, or laxatives, yung pampa-poop or pampajebs, in order to feel less guilty of the amount of food that they have eaten. Other people would engage in excessive exercises. So, like for example, mag-exercise sila ng more than 2 hours. So, that, which is um, not really advisable unless, of course, you are an athlete and it's part of your work. diba? But excessive exercise is not advisable to people who are not really an athlete. Or sometimes they would do fasting or food restriction. So, like for example, if I binge eat today, I will not be eating tomorrow, or I will be eating very minimal amounts of food the day after. So, ganun yung ginagawa nila most of the time. Okay, so with that as well, there is the recurrence of binge eating. So, paulit-ulit sila nagbi-binge eat despite of how they feel about it. And usually with bulimia nervosa, um, the feeling of guilt, shame, and regret is very apparent, unlike with the other disorder. Um, And then, of course, with the recurrent episode of binge eating, there is also a recurrent inappropriate compensatory behavior, and this is because they believe that by doing so, they are not going to gain weight from all of the things that they have eaten. And usually with this one, the binge eating and inappropriate compensatory behavior occurs on the average of at least once a week for the past 3 months. And then when you assess them, usually when you ask them about it, why they do that, they would tell you that it's because of how they look at their body and how they see their weight as well. And then, of course, the disturbance does not occur exclusively during anorexia nervosa. So, with that being said, the disorder cannot be um, comorbid with anorexia nervosa. If it's bulimia nervosa, it's just bulimia nervosa. So, ganun po siya. Okay. Okay, now with associated medical features, this is very important to discuss with eating disorders because of the fact that there is a lot of medical or physical damage that they do with their body given the eating habits that they are doing. So, um, with bulimia nervosa, most of them are within normal body weight. About 10% of these people are within normal body weight. However, the things that they do, the purging, um, the purging that they do causes problems to the different systems in their body. So, first off, when they do the purging, nagkakaroon ng erosion of their dental enamel. So, nasisira yung ngipin nila. And um, this is because of the fact that, 'di ba, when we vomit or when we puke, we're not just puking the food that we ate. We're also puking stomach acids, and the stomach acids that we throw up as well are the acids that the digestive system uses in order to break down the food that we have eaten, diba? That's biology 101, right? So, kasama din kasi siya sa isinusuka. So, definitely, it's going to be causing problems sa teeth. Kasi nga, these acids are not supposed to be in that or area or part of the body. And then, of course, when we puke, 'di ba, pag ano nga, nagkakaroon tayo ng ayun, pag nagkakaroon tayo ng diarrhea, and we also have, yun nga, pag nagsusuka tayo, we're also losing electrolytes. So, a big factor or a big impact of this kind of behavior is the loss of electrolytes, which causes imbalance inside the body. Aside from that, there are also cases of kidney failure, cardiac arrhythmia, seizures, intestinal problems, and of course, permanent colon damage. Okay. So continuing on with the features, associated features, in the psychological aspect, most of them you would be able to assess that they really have problems with their body image, particularly how they look at their body shape, and also they have this immense fear of gaining weight. And then a lot of them meet the about 20% meet the criteria for mood disorder, and 50 to 70% have had a mood disorder at some point. About 80% had met the criteria for anxiety disorder at some point, and nearly 2 in 5 people, almost an half, have some sort of substance abuse. And this is because of course, the toll that it takes on the person with how they perceive themselves in terms of their body image and their weight. And of course, the how do you call this, the substances that they also use in order to feel that they have some sense of control with their food intake, despite of the disordered eating behavior that they have. Okay, now for anorexia nervosa, we have the extreme weight loss as the hallmark for anorexia. Now with this one, ang sabi nga namin, with anorexia kasi, you won't really have any problem detecting that it's anorexia, because of the fact that um, you can already see that there is a problem based on their body structure. It's not that they are just thin, but they are thin almost to the point that they are skin and bones. So, kumbaga, physical features pa lang, medyo may idea ka na. However, you would gain more idea or knowledge about the case when you ask them, of course, or when you interview them about their condition. So, most of them would have a restriction of calorie intake, and this is usually below the energy requirements. So, kasi nga hindi na sila kumakain most of the time, or kung kumain man sila, tinalo pa yung manok kung kumain, dahil nga they try to limit the calories because they feel that everything or anything is um, fattening for them. So they also have intense fear of gaining weight, and they usually would begin first with dieting, and then later on the behavior becomes so extreme that they would that they would diet to the point of not eating, or this subtype, restricting type of anorexia nervosa, wherein they diet to limit the calorie intake. And this is not the usual diet that we know of. This is diet to the point that you're really starving yourself, to the point that you're not really putting any calories inside your body. And then they also do the binge eating purging behavior. So this is another subtype of anorexia nervosa, wherein they would eat, but then they would purge the things that they have eaten. So it's usually the little amount of food that they have eaten would be also purged out. So that's how they do that. And then of course, since they are eating a very low calories, or they restrict what they are eating, it causes them to have problems with, um, of course, their body weight, because they are not getting the sustenance or nutrition that they have, or that they should be getting anymore. So, like for example, kasi ang calories natin, if you would ask a nutritionist and dietitians, um it would depend on three things. It would depend on your BMI, your height, and your weight, and of course the level of activity that you usually do. So, when I tried that, when I was working out before, there was, my coach told me that I have to have at least, only 1,200 calories. So 1,200 calories, it's equivalent to one chicken joy and one jolly spaghetti. So that's already 1,200 calories. And it's not for one meal only, it's for the whole day. Given my level of activity at that time, and given my BMI as well. Kasi we have a target goal na weight at that time. So for me to get that, I have to eat only that one. Pero pag anorexia nervosa, they go through extremes to the point that masyadong malaki, 1,200 na calories. Kaya nga uh, they would opt to eat mga vegetables, low calorie foods, to the point na wala na talagang sustenance or wala nang nutrition yung kinakain nila. So that's how they usually diet. And this is because of this one. They have the intense fear of gaining weight or becoming fat, and they have this disturbance, in a way that body weight or shape is experienced. Kahit na mukhang normal lang yung katawan nila, they usually feel that they are still very big, or they are very fat. So that's how they look at themselves when they look at the mirror. So with their defining features, they have, of course, again, marked disturbance in their body image, just like with bulimia nervosa. And then in terms of comorbidity, they had, some of them have had depression. About 70% of them have had depression at some point. And they have higher rates of substance abuse and OCD, as compared with the other eating disorder. Now, since what they do is they literally starve their body, nagkakaroon ngayon ng imbalance ng energy in the whole body system. So, ang nangyayari is that tumataas yung risk nila for organ damage or organ failure, kasi nga nag-aagawan ng energy yung katawan, yung mga parts ng katawan. And this is why they are prone to cardiac damage, and which can later on lead to heart attack. So this is another disorder that has mortality rate, or may mga namamatay dito. And unlike with mood disorder, it's not because they end their lives, intentionally end their lives per se. But with anorexia nervosa, they are slowly damaging their body to the point that the body would just give up. So that they would die later on. So that's how it is. It's not that they would commit suicide. It's more or less they are slowly killing their body because of the lack of food that they are, not the lack of food, but rather they are pretty much starving themselves in order to feel better about their body. Okay. Now, as medical consequences, these are the following. So, since the body cannot really produce, or the body is in total chaos or imbalance, a lot of them don't have periods anymore, especially especially when anorexia nervosa was still when it has high incidence in women. Kasi ngayon, ano na parang medyo tumataas na rin ang incidence ng anorexia nervosa sa mga lalaki. And then they also have dry skin and brittle hair and nails. Again, this is because the body does not have the capacity to produce nutrients for these parts of the body anymore. And then, of course, they tend to be very sensitive to cold temperatures or to low temperatures kasi nga um, their body cannot produce heat anymore kasi wala nang nutrients. And then they have lanugo. Lanugo is the downy hair on limbs or cheeks. Usually we see this sa mga newborn baby. Parang meron silang yung balahibong pusa. I'm not sure what's happening with them. Bakit sila nagkakaroon ng ganon? Maybe siguro it's a body's way to parang self-defense or whatnot. But I think you have to ask a medical doctor for this one kasi mas alam nila to. And then of course, cardiovascular imbalance or problem, sorry, not imbalance. Kasi nga they are some of them they would exercise a lot to the point that they would pass out from exercising. So, hindi rin kasi maganda yun kasi when you do cardio, of course, it's going to work out your heart and your lungs. However, if you don't have the energy to do that, you're really pushing these organs to the limit. So, and hindi rin siya maganda kasi nga um, parang kumbaga sa remote control, na ubos na yung battery. You keep on pressing buttons on the remote control na konti na lang yung battery juice niya. So, pretty much, yung little left ng battery juice niya, itatry niyang gawin yung trabaho niya. But not to the optimum best. So, ganun din yung nangyayari with people with anorexia nervosa. Yes, they are exercising, but since they don't have the juice or the battery to do those exercises, kung ano lang yung natitira, yun yung binibigay or yun lang yung energize sa katawan nila. Kaya ayun, parang they are pushing their hearts to its limits. And then of course, electrolyte imbalance, we have discussed this already with bulimia nervosa. For those who are doing the purging, mas prone sila sa electrolyte imbalance kasi nga inilalabas nila not only the food but the acids as well as the electrolytes inside the body that is very much needed by the body. Aside from that, of course, since they are not really eating a lot or they are restricting their intake, some of them, or there are also cases na even water, they don't take it kasi some believes that water is also fattening. Uh, so, which is very ano ba to? Very concerning kasi water is aside from electrolytes, water does not have any calories or yeah, unless if it's yung mga water na yung parang specially formulated na water, yung mga pang-athletes para yun nga yung electrolytes nila ma-replenish, no. And then, most deadly mental disorder due to organ damage. Ayan, they are also prone to that. Ito nga yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina na they have high mortality rate. Not because they would kill themselves, but because they would slowly destroy their body by not eating or by pushing their bodies to the limits nang walang nutrients or walang energy to really fuel it. so to speak. Now, for the binge eating disorder, so this is a relatively new disorder in the DSM-5. And binge eating is the disordered eating behavior or the binge eating without the associated compensatory behaviors. So um, they are not really purging or vomiting it out. They are just eating a lot, and by eating a lot, they would also eat at a very short period of time. So a good example for this one would be the mukbang videos that we see. So they a lot of YouTubers that we see would eat high calorie food, and then they would eat that for a very short amount period of time. Um, but when we talk about the history of mukbang, it's not really intended to be like that. It was just exaggerated, and it blew up because of the content creators. I'm not sure if we can call it a content, a useful content, so to speak. But the mukbang videos started really as a way for people in South Korea not to feel lonely when they eat. And if you have watched yung mga original videos, the videos are usually they are eating the normal amounts of food. However, when there are some people na nakita nila na this can be a good content. So, ang ginawa na nila, ayun, yung mga challenge na ang dami-dami, 'di ba? Okay lang naman kasi mag-challenge ka, pero kasi yung mga iba yung spicy noodle challenge na parang 10 yatang noodles ang kakainin sa isang upuan. This is the beginning of unhealthy um, behaviors that were being encouraged by the amount of views and of course subscriptions that this type of content creators have with this type of content. So more or less parang na-reinforce yung binge eating with this with this particular platform. However, going back with the disorder, the binge eating is usually associated with distress and or functional impairment. So, usually we do this naman yung parang it's not really binge eating per se, but we are aware of what we call stress eating, wherein we eat a lot of food, and then the foods that we eat at the time are usually the unhealthy food. So, ganun ang ginagawa natin, especially when we're stressed out. So, pretty much we're eating out our emotions at that time. However, with binge eating, kaya nga siya naging disorder kasi nga, ayan, the behavior the behavior for eating is quite abnormal. And then aside from that, the eating that they are doing may na-associate silang feelings of guilt or distress. Ang kaibahan lang nila with the anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa is that they might not have the excessive concern for weight or shape. In some cases, there is concern for this one, just like with the other two disorders. But in some cases, it might not be present. Yung disordered eating behavior lang talaga yung present. At saka yung feelings of guilt that they would feel when doing that. Okay. Now, what are the associated features for this disorder? So, the first one is this one, about 20% of people who are in weight control programs suffer from a binge eating disorder. So, if you have seen yung mga reality show na I forgot yung mga title mga trashy reality shows. May napanood akong ganon na tungkol sa weight, yung tinutulungan nilang mag-lose ng weight, yung mga obese na contestants nila or viewers nila, whatever. However, but in those, hindi ko naman siya kasi pinapanood ng ng buo, but in those episodes we can see that there are some participants who would fall off the wagon literally, or so to speak, um meaning to say, they would stick with the diet or the exercise regimen that they were be given. However, after some time, ayun, babalik na naman sila sa pag-binge eat. Kakain na naman sila ng marami. Tapos, pag na-realize nila na, ayun, bumabalik na naman sila sa dati, ayun na, nakikita mo, nag-iiyak sila. So, um, usually, ayan, about 20%. At saka, I forgot yung isa, pinapanood ko to kay Cinnamon Toast Ken, yung reaction video niya. Uh, I forgot, sorry, kung anong mga ano yan, uh, kung anong video or kung anong TV show ang tawag doon. And then, aside from that, almost half of the candidates for bariatric surgery suffer from BED. Now, bariatric surgery is the type of surgery that is given to people na may obesity na, and they pretty much parang cut the long intestines, if I'm not mistaken, um, thereby parang making it faster for them to digest the food, so it will not be stored as fat later on. So pretty much that's the idea for this type of surgery. And then with this particular disorder, it has a better response treatment than other eating disorders. And then in terms of the incidence or uh, the population of people with this type of disorder, they tend to be more of the older population than as compared with those who are suffering from anorexia and bulimia, who are more on the teenagers to young adult. And then, aside from that, they have higher rates of psychopathology than non-binging obese individuals. So, in terms of clinical diagnosis, mas mataas ang clinical diagnosis ng mga to kesa dun sa mga uh, ibang obese na individuals, but not engaging in binge eating behaviors. Now, this is the diagnostic criteria for the binge eating disorder. We have, or you have to see a recurrent episode of binge eating, and then the binge eating episodes are associated with 3 or more of the following. So, usually it's eating more than normal, or what is customary or standard for that particular group. And then, people who also do that also eat until they feel uncomfortably full. Aside from that, they tend to eat large amount even though they are not hungry. So pretty much it's what we are seeing yun nga sa mukbang. And then yeah, most of them would eat alone because they tend to be embarrassed of how much they are eating, and they have this feeling of disgust or guilt after eating, which is again not a very good behavior, or not a very good feeling to have when you're eating um, food. Kasi nga, food is supposed to be enjoyed. It's philosophically speaking, it's one of the hedonistic activities that people have. So this is why feeling disgusted or guilty after eating is not, or is a symptom Kasi sometimes they are not, when you look at these cases or when you watch TV shows na it deals with obesity and yung mga cases nga nila ay nagbi-binge eat, pag tinanong mo sila, they are not really feeling guilty or disgusted by the amount that they are, yeah, they ate, but they felt guilty or disgusted that they are eating that much. So I hope you get the idea. It's quite difficult to to explain. You really have to look at these videos or these TV shows. I know some of them are quite trashy, pero to really understand it in their perspective, mas maganda panoorin nyo siya. Now, here in the Philippines, medyo hindi siya ganun ka-common. Given the fact that we are from a third world country, so things are quite limited, or we also have this culture of not wasting things. I'm not sure if it's still prevalent, but that is one of the main Asian culture where we're taught not to waste things, especially food. We have been taught to respect food, diba? So this is also why, if you would look at the statistics, there is a lower rate of Asians with this type of disorder. And then they tend to have marked distress regarding binge eating. And then the binge eating is not associated with bulimia. So this is why you cannot make it comorbid with bulimia nervosa, because bulimia nervosa has separate and distinct features than binge eating disorder. Now with bulimia, well, the statistics majority for bulimic people are about 90% of them are mostly female. And then but if you're looking at it in the male statistics, some binge eating symptoms are more common in male than with women. However, in terms of the statistics of this particular disorder, the incidence of this disorder among males is increasing by 0.8. So bulimia is 0.8 and 2.9% with binge eating disorder. Now, what they have seen in the statistics in America is that about 6 to 7% of college women suffer from bulimia at some point. And then the typical onset of this one is during the teenage years. And for the course, it turns to be chronic if the bulimia is not addressed or if left untreated. Now, for anorexia nervosa, just like with bulimia, majority are female, although may nakikita rin tayong spike or increase ng incidence sa male. And then, aside from that, majority ng may anorexia nervosa per se, are Caucasian or white female. Ang pinakamababang incidence ng anorexia would be with the African American. And this is because they were taught not to really be ashamed of their body. If you would look back in the culture, parang una pa lang yun na yung tinuturo sa kanila, because nga they tend to be of all the racial groups, sila yung isa sa parang mas mataas ang incidence ng being racially discriminated. So to fight back, what their culture did is to make sure that their children have a strong sense of self and also have a positive body image. So this is why in terms of the incidence, mas mababa ang incidence ng anorexia nervosa sa Black American people. And then, aside from that, mataas din ang incidence niya sa middle to upper middle class families. I think it has something to do with how they present themselves in the society. So, and then they also develop like with bulimia early adolescence, so around teenage years, and it usually persists up until adulthood kung hindi mo siya ma-address agad. And then, in terms of the course, it's more chronic and resistant than bulimia. And this is true kasi between the two disorders, bulimia nervosa tends to be ego dystonic, meaning to say they are aware of the abnormality or the dysfunctional behavior that they are doing and how it affects the different aspects of their lives. That is for bulimia. Whereas with anorexia nervosa, the condition tends to be egosyntonic. Hindi nila makita yung mali dun sa ginagawa nila. So, in terms of treatment, mas mahirap i-treat ang anorexia nervosa because they don't really believe that they are doing something wrong to their body with how they eat or how they look at food or their relationship to food. And then with the lifetime prevalence of this disorder, it occurs approximately at 1%. So, although it seems to be a small number, kung ilalagay natin siya sa buong population, this will be a big number already. And then cross-cultural factors, nakikita nila na tumataas ang possibility na magkaroon ka nito if when the person, a non-Western person or a non-Western woman moves to the Western country, nade-develop or tumataas ang chances na magkaroon ng gantong disorder. Now, what are the causes of eating disorders? So, let's look at it first at the social dimension. So, first up, we have the cultural factors. We know that the white race tends to glorify or have the beauty standard of being thin as parang the norm, no? Although historically that's not the case. Kung makikita nyo yung mga Renaissance painting, halos lahat ng mga babae dun sa painting nila na nakahubad are very chubby. Ang dami niyang body rolls, 'di ba? Double chin pa. So, okay. So, that is for the cultural factors. Just to add pala, with the cultural factors, kasi parang, di ba, nakikita rin sa not social media, in the media platforms that they have, di ba, uh, ang nagiging problem din kasi ang nakikita kasi ng mga tao, especially yung mga young people, young girls in particular, is yung mga magagandang actress, celebrities, models, 'di ba? We don't really see people who are of normal weight na nasa showbiz. May makita man tayo na thick girls kung tawagin nila. Usually it's not how do you say this? They're not Caucasian. Diba? Like for example, si Lizzo. Lizzo embraces her being a big girl, a big woman, right? We also have sila Nicki Minaj, diba, that they are very thick women in terms of their thighs. Beyonce as well. However, in terms of yung mga white singer like for example, si Adele, 'di ba? Noong una, natutuwa ako kay Adele kasi nga in terms of her body size, sabi ko, she's very body positive kasi she doesn't really look at her figure as problematic per se. Pero parang after she blew up in the industry, ayun, parang, ayun, nag-diet na siya to the point na parang hindi na maganda as a, if I'm someone who's young and I'm going to be looking up at her, parang yung mapapressure na ako na, ayun, I have to be like her um, kasi ayun, payat na din siya. So, parang naging ganun na siya. So, it also have something to do with what we are being fed from the society standards, mainly from the media. And then, of course, dietary restraints. So, with the dietary restraints, may mga, like for example, for those who are living in America, they don't really have much, or parang hindi masyado uso sa kanila yung home cooked meals. Mas uso sa kanila yung mga fast food. So this is why ang dami talagang obese sa kanilang lugar. And then, with the family influences, malaking bagay din to, especially for those who have binge eating disorder. Again, if you would watch those reality TV show that deals with overweight people, makikita mo isang malaking factor doon yung family nila, um, kaya sila nagko-continue or nare-reinforce or na-enable yung kanilang inappropriate behavior when it comes to food or eating because of their family members themselves. And then we also have biological dimensions. There are people who tends to uh, who has some anomaly in their body. That's why they tend to eat a lot. Uh, yung ayun nga, yung parang mayat maya gutom sila. So may mga ganong tao talaga na pag tinignan mo, there's a problem with their biology. It's not more on that they lack control or whatnot. It's really more on how they were uh, built per se. So yun yung nagiging problema. And then, of course, the psychological and behavioral dimension. So I mentioned earlier that sometimes we eat a lot when we are stressed out. So, yun yung sinasabi nating stress eating. However, if the person is constantly stressed, in the state of constant stress, and then the only coping that they have is by eating, ayun. So, pwede nang ma-trigger from that and then mag-spiral down na to an eating disorder. And of course, behavioral dimensions, the lack of control or self-control over what you eat. Kasi sometimes we use food as reinforcement. So we use it as a way for us to reward ourselves. However, hindi rin siya maganda in a way na if we're constantly using food as a reward, nagkakaroon na tayo ng parang dependence on that kind of reinforcement. And then, dahil nga may ganun tayong dependence on this kind of reinforcement, the control over the amount of food that we eat and the type of food that we eat are also going to be problematic later on. Pag sinanay natin yung sarili natin na ganun, no? Okay. Okay. Now, so, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina with the social factors. We have the media itself and the culture itself to really to blame, if I'm if I'm using the right word, to blame for yeah, they have pretty much the share of the blame as to why people engage to this type of behavior, or as to why people have this kind of behavior. So the media portrayals wherein yun nga, they link being thin to being happy, to being successful, to being beautiful. So everything good is linked with thinness, whereas kasi 'di ba yung mga ibang movie nakikita natin na yung mga uh, matataba sa movie, they don't really get the boy. If it's a romantic movie, they have to go through a makeover in order to have some sort of love life. 'Di ba may mga ganun kasi silang portrayal doon. So ang na-associate tuloy ng tao is that I have to be thin in order to um e- enjoy, or how do I say this, or how do we call this, enjoy or experience these types of things in life. And then we also have this cultural emphasis on dieting, and dieting that is not healthy. Hindi yung diet, kasi we also call healthy diet as diet, right? And when we say healthy diet, it has something to do with balanced diet, like having carbohydrates, having proteins in the form of meat, 'di ba? Having vegetables and fruits. So those things are also diet. But then with culture, especially the Western culture, ang dami nilang mga diet strategies, like yung keto diet, intermittent fasting, and so ang dami nilang pinapauso. And all of these are uh, all of these are made with the promise that the people who would do that would get thinner in just a matter of time without really exercising much, just watching what they eat, which is again problematic. This is a problematic advertisement because of the fact it's not encouraging healthy eating per se, because nga like for example with the keto diet, pretty much you're asking the person to do that by taking out specific nutrients that the body would need, and sometimes those who would do that are not really dietitians or nutritionists per se. They are more on sports professionals, or sports yeah, it's more of a sports advice, or coming from the sports perspective rather than the medical perspective, which is not again good, because of the fact that uh, there are people who are trained or who have studied what chemicals are needed by the body, and what chemicals shouldn't be um, consumed in big amounts. So, kumbaga, parang in terms of diet, I think we have to know sino yung mas dapat nating pakinggan. Ito ba or ito? 'Di ba? And then, ayan, we also have the set standards of ideal body size, wherein it's frequently changing and it's quite difficult to achieve. So, may napanood ako dating, okay, I'm sorry for that. May napanood ako dating video in Facebook. It was a TikTok video, pero naligaw sa Facebook. And ang sabi nung lalaki, parang naintindihan niya na kung bakit ang daming mga babae sa Amerika na may eating disorders, kasi yung sizing ng damit ang problematic. So parang sinuot niya yata yung t-shirt nung girlfriend niya, ang nakalagay sa t-shirt was medium. Tapos yung lalaki, in the guys department, or in the guys size, he was also medium. So parang, alam mo yun, hindi man lang tinake into consideration yung sizing in terms of the difference between the physiology of men and women. So dahil nga medium yung babae doon, sa size na yon, and then nagkasya ba? Hindi nagkasya. Medium ang size ng boyfriend niya, pero yung size nung ano is too small, parang ganon, for him, na parang crop top na. So sabi niya, how would you say that it's medium when it's small? Kasi nga parang halos magka-size lang sila. Hindi sila nagkakatalo per se. So yun yung question niya. Parang kina-question niya um, yung pagsa-size ng fashion industry sa damit, and he feels that it was also causing the problem na nagli-lead sa eating disorders ng karamihan sa babae. So, I'm not sure. I watched it years ago, so I'm not sure if it's still floating around the internet. So I'm sure it's still there, pero I think it would be difficult to try and retrieve it, no? And then we also have this one, using dietary supplements that can lead to serious problems such as binge drinking or other drug addictions. So like for example, yun nga yung mga laxatives, they are promoting laxatives as dietary supplements when laxatives are supposed to be used for people who are constipated. So ang daming ganon na ginagawa sa mga supplements to advertise it, and a lot of people would drink it kasi let's be honest, hindi natin sinusunod talaga yung kung paano siya dapat inumin. So what is sabihin sa'yo, this should be drank once or twice a day. So, may nakalagay doon, ideally, di ba? Best for drinking, once or twice a day. So, sometimes pag nakita natin na, makakapayat siya. So, iinom ka na mas madami. Kasi nga, ang feeling mo, mas mabilis kang papayat if you're going to consume more than recommended. So, if people are misusing it like that, it's going to cause serious problems later on, especially for those prescriptions or for those medications that are may addicting substances. So medyo may problema rin tayo dun. And not all laxatives are just laxatives per se, so you really have to know the contents to see kung ano ang meron sila. Kasi katulad nga nung nangyari sa akin, sabi ko sa pinsan ko na I think we were stress eating kasi nga I was doing reports as well as grades at that time. And then nagkataon na yung pinsan ko, who's thinner than me, was parang nagka-crave din siyang kumain. Nagka-crave din siya kumain. So, sabi ko sa kanya, tara, bili tayo ng pagkain. So, we bought several sticks of barbecue, yung mga different variety, Zigzag, Adidas, Betamax, diba? So, yung mga street food, basically. And then, we were eating rice together with those barbecue sticks. or barbecue. Uh, Tapos, the amount of rice that she was eating was too much for a girl her size. So, parang ang sa akin kasi, 2 cups of rice is enough for me. Nafe-feel ko na talagang bloated na ako pag beyond 2 cups of rice. So, that's why, lugi ako sa buffet at saka sa Mang Inasal. Anywhere na may only rice, lugi ako. Because I don't really consume a lot of rice. And then, nafe-feel ko kagad yun sa katawan ko kapag sobra na yung kinain ko. Parang nagbo-burp ako. Parang nagkakaroon ng air sa digestive system ko that's leading me to burp uncontrollably. So, siya, ayun, kinain yun. Parang, yung bahaw sa namin was the rest of the bahaw sa rice cooker, kinain niya lahat. And I think it's around 3/4 pa or half. So, sa half na yon, isang cup lang yata yung kinain ko or 1.5, ganon. Tapos siya yun. The rest siya na yung kumain. Kahit na wala ng ulam, suka na lang yung nilagay niya, inubos niya pa rin yung kanin. And then after that, so sabi ko sa kanya, nabo-bloat ako. Sabi ko parang feeling bloated na ako. Meron ka ba dyang uh, tsaa that can help with my bloating? So, she gave me this tea. So, ako naman, dahil pinsan ko siya, so, parang I didn't really think any of it. At saka yung binigay niya kasi sa akin, wala na yung, yung package. So, yung tea bag na lang siya. So, binigay niya sa akin, tinimpla ko yung tsaa. So, after few minutes, ayun, punta ng CR. Parang, siguro yung pang-apat na balik, tanong ko na siya, ano yung tsaa na binigay mo sa akin? Ay, ate, ito. Binigay niya sa akin yung pangalan. And then, when I look it up in the internet, ayun, nakalagay na laxative. Sabi ko sa kanya, ang kailangan ko is a tea that would lessen the bloating. Hindi ko kailangan ng laxative because I'm not constipated. So, yun pala nagtitake siya noon. And this explains her weight. So, sabi niya nga, parang marami siyang kumain, pero hindi daw nga siya nagigain ng weight because of that. And because she would have cigarettes after eating. So, ayun. So, nakikita na natin yung problema doon. So, sabi ko nga sa kanya, I think you have to see a doctor to see if your weight is still okay. Kasi, yung sinasabi mo sa akin and how I see you eat, I think there might be a problem. So, I'm not sure if she followed that advice. Kasi after that, parang they move out of our extended family home. Anyway, so this is the causes of the eating disorders as per the graph. Okay. So people with so looking at it in the social cultural perspective, yan. So yung anorexia nervosa, makikita natin na for those who have eating disorders per year or sa age. So, yung purple lines are the black race. The red lines or red dots are the white or the Caucasian. So, kung makikita natin, diba, consistently the whites are the ones with the problem with the eating disorders. With anorexia, they are the ones who really have, or they take the cake, so to speak. With the black population, they don't have a problem with anorexia nervosa. It is sustained at this level. Ayan, percent without a disorder, 1% consistent. Pero si white, it's consistently going down here. And then, with bulimia nervosa, hindi siya bumababa per se ha, yung nagkakaroon ng disorder in a particular group. For bulimia nervosa, medyo bumaba lang ng konti si black race, but the white one, ayan, sa baba, halos similar ng graph movement with the anorexia nervosa. With the binge eating disorder, halos same ang movement nila, pero mas mataas pa rin yung meron sa white race or yung Caucasians. Okay, now when adolescents try to engage in dieting behavior, what they saw is that they are 8 times more in a great risk for developing an eating disorder as compared to others. And then, and this is because of the fact na meron din kasing factor ng peer pressure dito. Uh, Ayan. So, they tend to internalize standards of friendship groups. Like, for example, the teen is more likely to diet if her friends are also dieting. And then, by doing such, it may paradoxically cause them to gain weight more than lose weight. And then, of course, this produces stress and withdrawal symptoms that increases the cravings for food. So, I'm not sure if you have watched yung weightlifting fairy, Kim Bokju, wherein yung roommate niya doon, si, I forgot yung pangalan ng roommate ni Bokju, yung gymnast, dahil nga na-stress siya because she needs to lose weight para magawa niya yung routine niya sa gymnastic. 'Di ba? 'Yun, nagda-diet siya pero sa sobrang sa sobrang stress niya doon sa hindi niya pag-lose weight, nag-cause pa siya ng cravings sa kanya ng food to the point na nagkaroon na siya ng parasomnia. So, we'll talk about that same example again later on with regards to parasomnia. So, ang nangyari tuloy ngayon sa kanya is instead of losing weight, she was gaining more weight, which affected her performance in her gymnast or her floor routine. Okay. Now, this is another graph that shows us the eating disorders in terms of the dieters versus the non-dieters. So, this is the cumulative hazard onset of obesity, and this is the age in years. So, for those who are dieting and those who are non-dieters. So, kung makikita natin, ayan, mas mataas nga yung hazard nila for an onset of obesity, unlike with the non-dieters. And this is again because of the fact that it's really stressing when you have to watch out for what you eat. That's true. Okay, and then this one. During the restricted food intake, during periods of restricted food intake, people have become occupied with food and eating. So, which is, yeah, this is a paradoxical experience. Totoo yan. Dahil nga, syempre, parang nagkakaroon ng clamor na, wala nang pagkain. So, all the more na parang mag-iisip ka na, paano kaya ako kakain? So, parang katulad din, di ba, ng pandemic na, ang cause ng sakit ay virus. So, we really have to get clean. So, lahat tayo na anxious about cleaning, about contamination, kasi nga, yun yung parang highlight at that particular period of time. So, ayan. In a classic study conducted during the World War II, volunteers placed on strict diets started thinking, writing, and reading more about food, unlike before. And again, this is because of the fact that you are put in a certain condition wherein you are given a restriction. So the restriction causes you more of some sort of increase thinking on that particular restriction. Okay. Now, with regards to family influences, ayan, parents with distorted perception of food and eating may restrict children's intake. So, food chubby toddlers on unnecessary diets. Whereas with families of individuals with anorexia, so they are seen to be high achieving, and then they are seen to be as well as concerned with external appearances, overly motivated to maintain harmony, and this causes to lead to poor communication and denial of problems. Disordered eating also strains the family relationship. This causes parental guilt and frustration, and often associated with poorer outcomes. Okay. So, we have also the genetic component. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina na there are people na iba yung build ng katawan nila, so they tend to eat more because of that anomaly in their biological makeup. So, relatives with people with eating disorders are 4 to 5 times more likely to develop an eating disorder. Now, that is for the heredity part per se. Pero, yun nga, yung mga may problema doon sa body system nila, so to speak, yun yung nagkakaroon talaga ng concerns or problems with how they do their, um, or with how they eat or their relationship to eating. So, but in terms of ano yung na mamana nila, hindi pa clear kung anong namamana per se. Pero ang assumption nila or hypothesis is that it might be something like the emotional instability or impulsivity. Yun yung talagang namamana, and not the gene, so to speak, for eating disorder, kasi wala pang nakikitang ganun talaga. And then what they also have seen is that people with eating disorders have low levels of serotogenic activity. So, medyo mababa ang serotonin activities nila. And then, of course, hormones may influence eating behavior. So, there are hormonal imbalances that causes us to eat more. So, this is also why, like, for females, when it's that time of the month, malapit na magkaroon ng regla, other people or other females, like me, for instance, I tend to go on food trip. I don't really binge eat because hindi talaga siya kinakaya ng katawan ko. Talagang katawan ko rin nagsasabi, tama na, Karen. Sobrang dami mo na kinain. And I would hear that. I would listen to what my body is telling me. So, there are instances na the hormones really are the ones that's causing the imbalance in eating. And then, with this one, ayan, they have low sense of personal control and self-confidence, of course. And then they tend to have perfectionist attitudes, especially for those with anorexia nervosa. They tend to have that. And of course, the distorted body image for the bulimia and anorexia nervosa, they tend to be gratified with food. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina. If you would train yourself to be reinforced with food, there might be a problem later on. And mood intolerance. So, if the mood is causing you to crave for food, yun nga yung sabi ko, eating your feelings, so to speak, yun yung mga nagkakaroon ng problems with their relationship with food. Okay. Okay, so this is a model of how eating disorders come about. Okay, so intindihin na lang natin kasi we're halfway through. No, we're not halfway through. Marami pa siya. And for this week, we have two or three three disorders to discuss. So, kaya hinahabol natin. Okay. Now, treatments for eating disorders, primarily for the medication, they would give antidepressants. And this is because, as mentioned earlier, the disorder tends to be comorbid a lot with mood disorders. Kaya antidepressants yung binibigay. Pero by by addressing the symptoms of anorexia nervosa, pretty much um it's not effective, or wala talagang effect, so to speak, with the anorexia nervosa. However, what they have seen is that SSRIs are good for bulimia. But then, ayan, for the treatment, especially for the two, it would be good to really put them for psychological treatments, particularly cognitive behavior therapy, with the core emphasis on the pathological mechanism, which is the distorted body image, especially for anorexia nervosa. And this is a bit difficult to do. Okay? Now, for the treatment of choice for bulimia nervosa, ayan, CBTE, um, and then, of course, antidepressants. This can help reduce the binging and purging behavior. Okay. For the binge eating disorder, they used to use uh, medications for obesity, pero hindi na siya recommended anymore. They have some side effects that are not good for someone whose disorder is more on just binge eating. What they saw though is that it's good to put them for CBT. It's quite effective. The efficacy is high. Interpersonal psychotherapy is also seen to be quite effective, and self-help techniques are also quite effective. Remember, one of the reasons as to why they binge eat is the feeling of lack of control. So, self-help techniques are going to be quite important part of the treatment. And then what they saw also is that IPT was effective for both rapid and non-rapid responders. Okay, now for anorexia nervosa, the treatment strategy or the case management is it's quite complex kasi you're not just going to address the psychological part of it, you're also going to address the biological part of it. Kasi nga, again, mas madami yung mga cases that they are slowly destroying the systems in their body. So, yun muna ang kailangan mong pagtuunan ng pansin. So this is why for these cases talagang um the the professionals, the allied professionals in the field are working hand in hand in order to help the client better. So, yun muna uunahin with restoration. First and easiest goal to achieve. Kasi nga, again, kahit na mag-psychotherapy ka dyan, maghapon, magdamag, if the brain itself lacks the nutrients to process everything, medyo mahihirapan ka with doing this psychoeducation, psychotherapy, 'di ba? Kasi nga hindi na 'yung papasok sa utak niya kasi the body itself is malnourished. So kailangan niya ng nutrients para ma-process 'yung mga gagawin mo pang ibang treatment. So another way to do that is for the behavioral and cognitive intervention. So, yun. Target food, ano yung mga kailangan niya kainin, weight and body image, ano kailangan mong i-reframe doon. Thought and emotion, how are you also going to reframe that in relation to their weight and body image. Treatment also often involves the family if you see that the cause of the disorder is the family itself. And also, they have to be there to show support, especially since one of the problems of the person with this disorder is their body image and their confidence as well. So, okay, now FBT has the most support for clinical trials for treating adolescents with anorexia. So, this is kumbaga a very good intervention to do for such cases. Okay. So, in so aside from treatment, it's good to prevent it first. So what they do is to what the society is doing, or people who are advocates of this particular um, for psychoeducation for this particular condition is they would uh, do um, psychoeducation or promotion of body acceptance or body positivity, especially in adolescent girls. Now, in our case here in the Philippines, there are companies that does that. One in particular, which is what I love with Dove, they are very keen on body positivity from the hair to the weight. They do that, which is why I like their commercials most, kasi nga like for example with yung Dove shampoo commercials nila, they have different types of hair, yung colored, yung hair na talagang kulot-kulot na hair. Hindi siya yung katulad ng mga common commercial natin na nakikita for shampoo na lahat naka-rebond, 'di ba? Which is very unrealistic. Tapos may mga commercial pa doon na nasa humid country ka, tapos fresh pa rin yung buhok. Parang, are you sure that's realistic? Kasi hindi maganda yung mga ganong advertisement. Kasi it promotes somehow it promotes body shaming, especially if you're not able to meet that kind of standard. Now, with going back with this, what I'm saying, with this type of strategy, ang ginagawa nila is identify the specific target. So, particularly yung weight concerns, and then they would screen at risk groups like sororities. Now, in the modeling industry, which is quite notorious to be the industry with most of people having eating disorders, what they do now is they check the BMI of the model, and then pag bumaba siya dun sa recommended BMI ng model, hindi nila binibigyan ng gig unless na bumalik siya dun sa recommended BMI niya or sa healthy BMI niya. So bukod doon, they also have, with some modeling agencies, what they do is they have coaches, the nutritionists or the dietitians, along with the weight coaches and yung mga sports or gym coaches nila. They all work together in order to help the model reach their ideal body for the modeling gig. And then ayun, somehow the fashion industry had been making its changes as well. They are trying to make dresses or clothes that will fit normal body types, hindi yung parang naglalakad na hang air, so to speak, no? So some groups would provide education regarding normal weight limits, and then the effects of calorie restriction, para nga mas makita in a better sense anong nangyayari when we restrict food, or when we deny food that the body should be eating to ourselves. Okay. Now, with obesity, ayan, you are going to be considered as obese if you have a BMI of 30 plus and above. So, as I've said earlier, it may not be a DSM-5 disorder, but it can be a consequence, especially for binge eating disorder. Now, in the US, mataas na talaga yung number of people who are obese sa kanila. And then, mataas din ang mortality rates niya, and the mortality rates is somehow within the levels of those who are smokers. And then what they have been seeing from their statistics is that the obesity level or statistics is rapidly increasing, particularly in their children and teens. So this is why when you go to America, there are teenagers there na mas mukha pang mas matanda kaysa sa'yo. Yeah, I got into in one of my travels, I went for a group tour with other nationalities, as may isa kaming nakasalumuha doon na white family. Mas mukha pang 30 sa amin ang barkada ko, yung mga anak nila. And the children were only in their teens. It's not because that they are tall, it's because that they are big, they are obese. So although physiologically speaking naman magkaiba naman talaga yung build ng Asian sa Caucasian, but then in terms of the weight per se, a teenager shouldn't be at that weight, especially since teens are known to be still developmentally, they are known to have a very active lifestyle. So what they have seen as well is that obesity is growing rapidly, or is a growing concern in developing countries. So ayan, dahil marami silang uh, marami silang richness, or they are a rich country, uh, marami rin silang pambili nung kung ano-ano mang pagkain. Sometimes it's not healthy anymore. Okay. And then with the ethnicity, ayan, so kung makikita natin for Hispanic adolescents, black adolescents, and non-Hispanic white adolescents. So with the BMI for the age greater than the 95th percentile. Okay. So, kung makikita natin, etong dalawa, tignan mo yung number nila. Wala sila masyadong obesity or hindi ganun kataas. Whereas, pagdating dito, ibang-iba yung number nila dito. Okay. Now, obesity occurs with other disordered eating patterns, and one of them is the night eating syndrome. Now, the night eating syndrome, ito yung parang tinatawag na midnight snack. Kakain siya kahit gabing-gabi na. Kaya matutulog na lang siya, kakain pa rin siya. So, it occurs about 7 to 19% of treatment seekers, and occurs in half of the individuals seeking bariatric therapy or surgery, sorry. And then usually they consume 1/3 or more of daily calories after dinner. So ayan, nakapag-dinner na sila, pero gutom pa rin sila. And some of them would get up at night just to eat. Patients are wide awake and do not binge eat. They would not do the binge eating, but they would still eat even after they have just had their dinner. Parang feeling nila gutom pa rin sila. So, then kinabukasan, they would not really eat their breakfast. So, yun yung usual na eating habits nila or eating patterns nila. So, with this one, people with, yan. So, those with the normal weight, so the BMI within the normal weight is around 18 to 24.99. Those who are considered overweight are around 25 to 29.99, and class 1 obesity is at 30 and up. So may mga classes pa yan. So kung titingnan natin yung kanilang percentage, ayan. So mas mataas siya. Yung overweight and normal weight hindi nagkakalayo halos in the percentage, pero tong mga to, ang laki ng gap nila. Okay? And from overweight to class 1, ang laki ng gap din. Okay, now what's the causes of obesity? Now, obesity is related more to technological advancement. So, and this is because of the technology that we have, where everything is accessible with just a touch of a finger, and then things are done. We can get things delivered to us at our doorstep. We have elevators, we have escalators, diba? Instead of walking, instead of moving our body about, we have these things that helps us to move more efficiently. Yes, it's efficient, but then it has a setback to our health. So, dahil nga sa technological advancement na to, ayan, it promotes inactive and sedentary lifestyle. And then aside from that, genetics also play a big part for this one. So about 30% of obesity cases has genetics to account for as the cause of their obesity. Um, there are also psychosocial factors that might contribute for obesity. So more likely to be obese people in close social circles are also obese. So, parang ano, tell me who your friends are and I will tell you who you are. So, pretty much it's like that. So, if your group of friends are those who eat in a disordered manner or problematic manner, mataas din yung tendency na ganun din yung eating patterns mo. Okay. Now, for treatment, the efficacy of the treatment has moderate success with adults, but it has greater success for children and adolescents. So this is why it's good to start the treatment at a young age. So, ang ginagawa nila with the treatment, it's a combination of restricted calorie intake and increased physical activity along with behavior therapy, para ayun ma-address yung obesity. So, treatment progression from least to most intrusive option. So, yun nga yung ginagawa nila. From the most hindi masyado alarming na way to do that to the most intrusive thing in order to address that. Okay. Now, what are the steps rather for obesity treatment? So we have the first step, self-directed weight loss program. Second step, commercial self-help program. So ito yung medyo may trainer ka na, may nutritionist ka na, yung pwedeng pumunta kang sa gym to have that program given to you. Third step, behavior modification program. Like for example, kung ang kain mo usually ay, diba yung parang pabibigat for every meal. So yan, imo-modify mo na siya. And then, the last step is this one, the bariatric surgery. Kung medyo slow ang progress dito sa tatlong to, ito yung isa sa pinaka means to do that. And usually this is given doon sa mga type 2, type 3 cases of obesity na. Yung type 1 kasi kaya pa siyang ma-address. Now, okay, so that's it for eating disorders and obesity. Let's move on to sleep-wake disorders. With sleep-wake disorders, let's start first with the importance of sleep. Sleep is actually very important. You can see, pag nag-practice na kayo, you will see the importance of sleep. In my cases or in my experience, sleep, the lack of sleep or the quality of sleep that my clients have are usually their telltale signs given na there's something wrong with them. So, about 90% of my cases, lagi na sinasabi, ayun, di na sila makatulog, or makatulog man sila, it's not a quality sleep that they were looking for. So, ganun yung mga laging sinasabi nila sa akin. And it's not good usually pag narinig ko kagad yon, ang lagi kong recommendation sa kanila is i-address kagad namin yung sleep problem nila. For one, it's not good to be sleep deprived kasi it of course affects our immune functioning. So it decreases our immunity level. So mas prone tayo sa mga sakit-sakit. So parang may psychological problems ka na nga or may mental health issues ka na nga, meron ka pang physiological problem. So this is not also good. Aside from that, the sleep deprivation also affects other functionings as well. So, hindi lang yung energy level natin, our mood, memory, concentration, and attention are also affected. So, this is why when you go to the class na hindi ka nakatulog na maayos, diba, antok-antok ka pa, tapos pag tinanong ka anong naintindihan mo kay Ma'am Karen, pretty much everything I said, parang tumalon lang sa ulo mo or nag-bounce back lang sa tenga mo. Kasi nga, you are not paying that much attention to what I'm saying because you don't have enough of sleep or you were not able to get a lot of sleep. And then, sleep loss also, this is why for people who has anxiety and has yung sleep deprivation or sleep loss as one of their symptoms. This is also why a lot of them later on develop feelings of depression or nagkakaroon sila ng depressive mood kasi nga ayun, from anxiety, and then the anxiety causes them to lose sleep. Ayun, hindi na nagiging maganda yung mood nila later on until it becomes something like depression. Okay, so how do we evaluate good sleep? We are able to evaluate sleep by using this particular uh, tools. So we have the EEG wherein it tries to study our brain waves. By looking at the brain waves, makikita natin anong level na or anong stage na ng sleep yung meron yung tao. We also have the EOG wherein it detects the eye movements. Basically, when we're sleeping, especially when we are at the REM stage, yung mabilis yung eye movement, ayun, we can say that the person's sleep is already on the deep part or deep stage. And then we also have the EMG, the muscle movements. So usually when we sleep, the muscles are on the lax side or on the relaxed state. So walang tense na muscle. Pag may tense na muscle when you're sleeping, that might be a cause or that may be a case of parasomnia. Okay, and then with this particular things, we also need to, aside from this particular tools, we also need a detailed history assessment of the sleep hygiene and sleep efficiency of the person. And then we also have the actigraph. So the actigraph, doon sa mga may smartwatches, like for example, yung sa smartwatch ko, ayan, nadidetect niya yung yung movement ko when I'm sleeping. So in fairness naman, ano naman siya, somehow accurate based on what I remember uh, from my sleep. So like for example, ang sabi ng ano ko ng smartwatch, I was only able to sleep 6 hours. No. All in all, ang bilang niya sa sleep ko is 7 hours. Pero, in reality, ang lahat lang ng tulog ko ay 6 hours. So, may ganun siyang estimation. And then, from what I saw, na-detect niya na gising ako around 2 a.m. which is true. Kasi may nag-message sa akin ng 2 a.m. I got awakened by the very very soft sound of the I forgot to put my phone kasi in sleep mode. So mali ko rin 'yon. Um So these types of wearable devices can we can use as a way to see our sleep um, history. Now, we have two types of disorders for sleep disorders. So, the first one is dysomnias. So, dysomnias are the group that covers the difficulties in amount, quality, or timing of sleep. So, lahat ng disorder na nandyan ay tungkol lang dito. So, ayan, amount, kung konti lang yung tulog mo, kung hindi restful yung tulog mo, or kung parang may circadian rhythm disorder ka sa sleep, yung iba ang time zone. So, yun yung problema. Pag iba ang time zone, nagkakaroon ng problema sa pagtulog. And then, the other one, parasomnias. Ito naman yung abnormal behavior and physiological events that occur during sleep. So, this might be sleepwalking, sleep talking, so those things. Okay, so the most common sleep disorder that we know of is the insomnia disorder, or just insomnia. And this is what we call, ito yung microsleeps lang. This is because the people with this type of disorder have problems initiating and or maintaining sleep. So they either have trouble falling asleep, or they would wake up during the night, or they would wake up too early in the morning. So as a result, they would report daytime sleepiness, and this will be only diagnosed as a sleep disorder if it is not explained by a different condition. So, in order to be able to really say that it is insomnia and not other disorder, you have to you had to rule out other types of disorder. Kasi nga, like for example, in my cases, the poor sleep or the complaints about their sleep are more or less features of another disorder and not a disorder itself. So, sasabihin na hindi sila nakakatulog. So, ba't di sila nakakatulog? Ayun, sasabihin na sa akin, ayun, kasi nag-iisip ako, mama, ang dami ko iniisip, blah, blah, blah. So, di na siya nakakatulog. So, in that way, it's not insomnia per se, but rather it's a symptom of another disorder. Okay, so what are the diagnostic criteria for insomnia or insomnia disorder? So usually, person with this type of disorder has had been very dissatisfied with their either the quality of their sleep or the quantity of their sleep. So, ayun, either kulang sila sa oras ng tulog, or feeling nila hindi restful yung tulog nila. Makatulog man sila, hindi siya yung restful na sleep that we usually have when we take a nap or when we sleep at night. And then, of course, the sleep disturbance causes significant level of distress in different aspects of life, particularly when they are working or when they are in school. And sleep difficulty occurs 3 nights per week for more than at least 2 months. So, ganon kadalas yung hindi nila pagkatulog. And then, difficulty occurs when there is possibility of sleep. Meaning to say, hindi pang gabi yung shift nila. Wala silang ibang gagawin for the night kundi matulog lang. And there are no other distractions that would keep them from sleep. Like for example, nakatira ka sa may riles, malapit sa may riles ng tren. So definitely pag yung pagdaan-daan ng tren nakakasagabal sa pagtulog mo, definitely it's going to be a problem. Pero kung wala naman, maayos yung area mo for sleeping, hindi ka lang talaga makatulog, then that might be a symptom for insomnia. And then, of course, there should be no other physiological, medical, or mental disorders that would explain the symptoms itself. So, you really have to be careful for this part kasi nga, again, the lack of sleep or the yeah, features of sleep problem are usually features for some type of disorder. Okay, with the statistics, yan, this is often associated with medical and or other psychological conditions or disorders like anxiety, depression, and substance use. And insomnia often affects females twice as often as male. And then with associated features for insomnia, usually people have or they tend to have unrealistic expectation about sleep. Ang in-expect kasi nung ibang tao is that may mga instances din kasi na may magrereklamo sa akin na may insomnia sila, but then ang pag tinignan mo naman mabuti yung lifestyle nila, kaya pala sila hindi nakakatulog na maayos. It has something to do with their lifestyle or somehow ayun, nalilimutan nila na as we age, the quality of sleep that we have is not going to be the same quality of sleep as we have when we were younger. Okay. And then they tend to also have this idea that the lack of sleep will be more disruptive than it usually is. Yung iisipin nila, matutulog na naman eh, hindi nga ako makatulog. So parang, alam mo yun, hindi pa sila natutulog, pero iniisip na nila na hindi sila makakatulog. Unless, of course, they are given some sort of substance that would help them sleep. Okay, so some of the causes of insomnia, there might be some pain or some sort of physical discomfort. So, hanapin din muna yon. Baka may ganito silang nararanasan that's causing them not to sleep. Another is the delayed temperature rhythm, wherein the body temperature doesn't drop until later, or it's not leading to drowsiness. Sometimes kasi when the temperature in the room is not ideal, like for example, pag mainit, talagang hindi magda-drop yung temperature ng body. So, therefore, hindi ka rin makakatulog ng maayos or hindi ka rin makakatulog pa kahit na parang 15 minutes ka nang nakahiga sa kama at wala pa rin nangyayari, 'di ba? So, this is why ang nire-recommend ng sleep doctors is mas maganda na matulog ka sa malamig na kwarto. So, if you have air conditioning unit, much better. Ayan. Light, noise, and temperature influence the ability to sleep. So, this is why for people who are quite sensitive to light, they have the blackout curtains. Para pag matutulog sila, hindi especially pag mag-uumaga na kasi hindi naman magigising ng 4 or 5 yung iba, hindi naman yun yung time ng paggising nila. Syempre, especially for countries like us na malapit sa equator, mabilis or maaga mag-umaga dito, 'di ba? So, sensitivity to light and the noise can also affect how we sleep. So, those who have those problems, ayan, they have blackout curtains, they have yung eye mask, the sleeping mask, and then they also have the headsets or noise cancelling headphones where they put on their ears or in their ears to help them sleep better. Okay. There are other sleep disorders that causes secondary insomnia. So ito yung first nila, ayan, ito yung first condition nila. So and leads to insomnia per se. So, kaya secondary insomnia ang tawag doon. Na parang kaya sila nagkakaroon ng insomnia because of these conditions. So, first off, we have apnea. Now, apnea, ito yung obstruction sa air passage and this causes the problems for sleeping. So, and then we also have the periodic limb movement disorder. So, ito yung, hindi lang siya yung sleep Kasi 'di ba may instances tayo na papatulog tayo tapos bigla tayong mag-jerk ng katawan kasi naramdaman mo parang ano ba to? Yung nahuhulog ka sa mataas na building. So hindi yon per se. May iba pa siyang ano, yung talagang parang may tick sa katawan mo or sa limb mo. So, syempre, pag gumalaw yung katawan mo, magigising ka. And also, of course, if you have or if you suffer from prolonged stress and anxiety, this can also cause insomnia later on. Okay, we also have this one as causes of insomnia. We have the parental effects on children's sleep. So, negative beliefs about sleep linked to more infant waking during the night. So, depending on how the parents view sleep or kung anong tinuro sa kanilang belief about sleep na hindi naman totoo, can affect the sleep of the infant later on. And then, ayan, ito yung mga hindi magandang practices when, but in Asian countries kasi it's not a problem. Parang we tend to practice or separate children from sleeping with the parents up until certain age. We do not start them young. Kasi in US, since they have the room to do that, and I think it has something to do with cultural differences as well. But in Asian countries naman, after they have been trained, there will there they pretty much have no problem with sleeping on their own. Alright, so this is the yan, so this is an integrative model as to why people have sleep disturbance. So this one, sleep stress, like for example sleep hygiene, for sleep hygiene, like watching too much TikTok videos, and then um, sleeping late because of that, then sleep disturbance, maladaptive reaction. So, dahil hindi ka nakatulog ng maayos the night before, kakawanood ng TikTok, magnanap ka, or dahil nga lagi ka na nasusustain ng ganong sleep schedule because of that behavior, you would later on turn to self-medication that would help you sleep. Ayan. So, doon nagkakaroon ng development ng problem sa sleep. Okay. So, aside from insomnia, we also have hypersomnolence disorder, wherein the person is sleeping too much or have excessive sleep. Okay? So, this may be manifested as long nights of sleep or frequent napping. And then the person with this one experience excessive sleepiness, which causes a problem. Now, what are the defining features of this disorder? So, unfortunately, there is limited research for this disorder, unlike with other sleep disorders. So, this is why the causes are not well understood. However, what they do know about it is that sometimes it has something to do with an existing medical condition or other psychological conditions. Now, this can be only diagnosed if it doesn't really explain the hypersomnia of the person, which should be the primary complaint. Yun nga, yung lagi siyang inaantok kahit na yung tulog niya ay kumpleto naman. So, yan. So, associated features complain of sleepiness throughout the day, and they are able to sleep through the night. So, meaning to say, wala silang problem with their sleep. Pero inaantok pa rin sila. So, narcolepsy, ito naman yung talagang, even in in circumstances na unexpected, they would fall asleep. Yung kasi yung isa with the hypersomnolence, inaantok lang sila. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. Now, the principal symptom for this one is the recurrent intense need for sleep, lapses into sleep, or napping. And it should be also accompanied by at least once the cataplexy, which is the brief episodes of sudden bilateral loss of muscle tone with maintained consciousness precipitated by laughing or joking, or in children soon after the disorder onset, grimacing or jaw opening episodes with tongue thrusting or hypotonia without any emotional triggers. So, parang meron silang limb reaction na not normal when they are awake. And then they also are seen to have hypocreatinine deficiency. Now, this will be only seen after a lab test or lab results. So, dun mo lang siya malalaman kung present ba siya or hindi. And then, going to REM, sleep abnormally fast, which is usually less than 15 minutes, as evidenced by polysomnographic measures. So, you really need to have a lab test in order to determine if it's narcolepsy or not. Okay. Now, narcolepsy actually is a rare condition. So, kahit na ginagamit natin siyang mga Pilipino na to characterize someone who tends to sleep a lot, 'di ba? Mga barkada natin na, yan, masandal na naman yan, tulog, narcoleptic ata yan. 'Di ba? We tend to use it in such manner. We tend to use it loosely. But then, when we look at it, the condition is actually very rare. So, it's so rare that it affects only about 0.03% to 0.16% of the population. So, it's not even 1%. And then the distribution is seen to be equally distributed between males and females. And the onset typically is during the adolescence. However, in terms of prognosis, it has a good prognosis as it is seen to typically improve over time. Okay, now another type of dysomnia is the breathing-related sleep disorder. So, ito yung apnea na sinasabi ko kanina with insomnia, no? Pag may secondary insomnia ka, it might be caused by apnea. Now, with apnea, we have this one, the first one, the obstructive sleep apnea, hypopnea, wherein the airflow stops but the respiratory system is still working. On the other hand, we also have the central sleep apnea, wherein the respiratory system stops for brief periods. So, ayan yung pinagkaiba ng dalawa. But usually, it's more of this one, yung may stoppage ng airflow, but the respiratory system is still working. And then we also have the sleep-related hypoventilation, wherein there is a decreased breathing during sleep, and which is not better explained by other sleep disorder. Okay, now obstructive sleep apnea actually occurs in about 10 to 20% of the population, and it is seen to be more common in males than with females, as well as highly associated with obesity and increasing age. And this is why we would see people who are obese and yung mga mas matatanda, yung parang nag-snore sila, and it's not just snoring na usual na hilik, parang may kakaiba doon sa hilik nila. Parang yung hilik nila yung may I have an uncle like that. Pag humilik siya, grabe, akala mo may helicopter. Tapos may time pa na bigla siya mag-stop. Tapos minsan tinitingnan ko nga kung tumataas baba pa rin ba yung dibdib niya eh. Kasi baka mamaya hindi na pala nahinga. So if that is the case, usually ang sinasabi ng doktor, may apnea nga sila. given the type of snoring or the amount of snores that they would have. Okay. So people are usually minimally aware of their apnea. Um, and ayan, they often snore and sweat during sleep and they wake frequently. So and then in the morning they have headaches because of the basically with the inefficient airflow, and of course yung mga naging problem nila while they were sleeping. They also may experience episodes of falling asleep during the day due to poor sleep quality at night. Okay. Now, we also have this one, the circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorders. Now, eto, they have disturbed sleep. Either would have insomnia or excessive sleepiness that leads to distress or functional impairment, like decreased productivity at work. And this is usually due to the brain's inability to synchronize day and night. So with that one, ang nangyayari dito is, ayan, hindi na stimulate yung melatonin nila, which is a hormone that is needed for sleep. So, kasi melatonin regulates the sense of a night and day, so it helps to regulate that sense. So, yan. Kaya, minsan nagiging problematic to doon sa mga may graveyard shift. So, nagkakaroon sila ng irregular hours kasi nga instead of sleeping at night, they are working at night, and instead of working at day, they are sleeping at days. And then sometimes they might have yun, sa family, they have a family history of dysregulated rhythms. Then, or they might have delayed or advanced sleep pace, meaning to say the biological clock is naturally set earlier or later than a normal bedtime. So, ito yung minsan sasabihin nila na, ano ako, night owl talaga ako, hindi pa ako nakakatulog ng gantong ano. So, it really depends on their biological clock per se. Okay. Now, this is, ayan, yung suprachiasmatic nucleus na may kinalaman sa ating pag-sense ng night and day. Yan, yan. So, siya yung magsasabi na, umaga na, or gabi na. So, this is also why it's not good for us to look at our devices at night. Kasi nga, kahit na naka-bedtime mode pa siya or naka-night mode siya, the fact that it is blue light, it gives this part of the brain the idea na, umaga na. So, kaya hindi ka makatulog. A lot of my clients are like that, especially those who are teenagers and young adults. Yun yung mga reklamo nila, hindi ako makatulog kahit anong tulog ko or kahit anong pilit ko, ganto. Nakabilang na ako ng 1,000 na tupa, hindi talaga. Okay? Tapos pag tinatanong ko, what do you usually do? Kasi sasabihin nila minsan ayun na parang mag-scroll na lang daw sila sa cellphone nila until such time that they would have fallen asleep na. So, dun pa lang sasabi ko na kasi your way of resolving your difficulty to sleep is also problematic. So, yun yung sinasabi ko. Kaya, sinasabi ko muna, you try to sleep when you feel sleepy. Pag hindi ka makatulog, umalis ka muna sa kama mo. Patulog ka pag nararamdaman mo na or bumalik ka pag nararamdaman mo na. Kasi minsan mas nakaka-stress na nasa kama ka or nasa higaan ka and then pinipilit mo makatulog, then hindi ka talaga makatulog. So, minsan mas stressful siya. Okay. Now, what are the treatments for these disorders? So, we have benzodiazepines or over-the-counter sleep medication. So, in our case, we have the Sleepacil, right? It's not something with certain chemicals talaga. Ang meron siya is parang supplement for melatonin. Yun yung meron si Sleepacil, no? However, ang problema natin with those supplements, kahit supplement lang siya, it can cause rebound insomnia. Pag matagal mo siyang ginamit, like for example, regulated na yung sleep mo, okay ka na, nakakatulog ka na, pero ginagamit mo pa rin siya, umiinom ka pa rin ng lagi, parang ginagawa mo siyang vitamins. It's not good. Kasi baka later on, yun pa yung mag-cause ng insomnia mo. And then, of course, dependence if you're going to be using prescripted drugs. And then, these are also known only as a short-term solution for your case, diba? So, it's not something that is for long-term. So, if you're looking for a long-term substance, you look for vitamins that would support um, the regulation and stimulation of your melatonin. And that would be vitamins, of course. Hindi yung supplements. Iba ang supplements sa vitamins. And then we also have for hypersomnia and narcolepsy. They are given stimulants like for example Ritalin para yun magising nga sila. Whereas with the cataplexy, they are usually treated with antidepressants. Okay. Now, for breathing-related sleep disorders, ito yung binibigay sa kanila, medications, weight loss, especially if it's caused by obesity or mechanical devices. So, there are people, especially with worse apnea, may binibigay sa kanilang sleep device para ma-regulate yung snoring nila at saka yung kanilang, the apnea itself. And then, the circadian sleep-wake disorder, so pace delays ang ginagawa nila. Moving the bedtime later is really the best approach. However, it's problematic for people na parang, like for example, when my friend came back here to the Philippines for her vacation, it was problematic for her and her boyfriend for the first few days kasi nga, they were here for half a month. Yeah, half a month. And then the time difference between Poland and Philippines was 6 hours. So, parang ang hirap i-move ng 6 hours yung bedtime mo. And then, or kung pwede naman, phase advances, moving the bedtime earlier. But this is more difficult. Yun nga, katulad nga ng sinabi ko, if the difference is 6 hours or 7 hours or sa US 15 hours, 18 hours ang delay depending on the state, ang hirap talagang gawin nun. Sometimes they use a very bright light in order to trick the brain's biological clock. Yun nga, para sabihin na umaga na. Or sometimes yun nga yung light blackout curtains and sleep mask in order to really block the light and make you feel na it's already night. Now, for insomnia, you can also use CBT. So, nakikita natin how useful CBT is, right? But with this one, okay, so we usually give psychoeducation for about sleep, the things that should be done and should not be done for sleep. So this is a good way to do that. Also, changing beliefs about sleep. Like for example, ang dami kasing mga ang dami kasing mga nag-iisip. Nalaman ko lang to when I was already in practice for therapy. Ang iniisip nila pag nag-nap sila ng tanghali, they can sleep late at night, where in fact the sleep at night is different from the naps that we have in the afternoon. So hindi siya maganda. Na kumbaga kasi ang inisip na parang meron kang deposito hindi siya ganon. The sleep that we have at at night is quite different from the naps that we have, the short naps that we have. Okay, and then it would be also very useful when we monitor our sleep using sleep diaries. So I ask my clients to do that as well, especially with those who have pronounced problems with their sleep. And then I ask them to do better sleep hygiene habits. Like for example, not eating, not eating, sometimes kasi naka-interfere yon sa pagtulog natin, yung kakain ka and then you would feel full before going to sleep. So, hindi siya nakakatulong. Kasi parang, imbis na yung system mo nakafocus sa pag-relax dahil matutulog ka na, the rest of the body or some parts of the body are still working in order to digest what you have eaten. And then, there are also some assumptions that they cannot function well on little sleep. This also has to be reframed kasi may mga ganun akong clients din na sabihin na hindi maganda yung tulog ko, so therefore hindi na magiging maganda yung araw ko, which is hindi naman siya always ganun. Pero kasi the association itself is not helpful. It's going to be problematic later on. Ang hindi maganda, of course, pag hindi quality yung sleep mo on a daily basis, yun na yung problematic. But if you only fail to sleep well for one day, that's okay. Hindi naman siya siguro ganun kalaki yung impact sa gagawin mo for that rest of the day. Aside from that, we also help them, or as part of the treatment, of course, yung relaxation techniques and stress reduction techniques are also taught to the clients in order for them to reduce their stress level and of course assist with their sleep initiation. Kasi nga pag mataas ang stress level mo, mataas ang cortisol mo, and high levels of cortisol does not really help promote sleep. And then of course with that one, ayan, modify unrealistic expectation about sleep na matutulog na ako, so kailangan makatulog ako kagad. May mga ganun din kasi without really taking into consideration factors that might be affecting one's sleep for that time. And then, stimulus control procedures. So, ito, improve sleep hygiene. Ito yung naging one of the usual problems, or one of the usual factors that affected their sleep was this one. Especially at the height of the pandemic, kasi nga dahil lahat ay work from home, so parang yung kanilang work place for sleep and workplace naging iisa na lang. So hindi na nagkaroon ng malinaw na boundary, so hindi na nagkaroon ng ganong association sa brain na this place is my place for relaxation and getting rest. Parang ang nangyari na kasi is, this place is where I sleep and where I also work. So, ayun, pinaayos ko muna yun sa kanila para ma-improve yung sleep nila. And then, with this one, ito yung mga sinasabi ko lagi sa pinsan ko, yung may mga anak. A lot of them had been telling me, kasi pag pumupunta dito sa Makati yung mga pamangkin ko, I would see my nieces and nephews parang mukha ng panda. And it turns out, yun, they would be allowed to have their devices parang want to sawa, which is not good. And also, which also interferes with their bedtime routine. Kasi kailangan talaga nakaset yung schedule mo. Yung same time for sleep and same time for waking up. So that is part of good sleep hygiene. Okay. Now, to prevent sleep disorders, the best approach is, ito nga yung lagi namin sinasabi, is to practice healthy sleep hygiene. So, when we talk about sleep hygiene, these are behaviors that lead to adequate and quantity of sleep. So, yun nga, putting away your devices, not looking at your devices before going to bed, and then, making your place of sleep as your place of rest and not some other thing. Okay. So, and then it's very helpful to educate the parents about the good sleep habits of the children. Especially nowadays na ayun, mas madami na yung time for the devices. Isa rin yun sa mga ways or isa rin yun sa mga things na ine-educate namin sila kasi ang sinasabi sa amin kasi minsan ng parents, kasi tahimik sila pag may device sila, which is not good way to discipline children, especially when they are about to sleep. This is not a good way to keep them quiet. We have to learn other ways to discipline them and also ways to um, provide a routine for their sleep. Okay, now moving on to parasomnias. Konting taste na lang guys. This will be brief. So the parasomnias, ito naman ay it's not a problem with the quality or the quantity of sleep. It's more on the behavior that is happening during sleep or after waking up from sleep. So there are two types of parasomnias. The ones that occur during the sleep phase or the REM or the dream phase, and those that occur during the non-REM or the non-dream sleep phase. Now, we have the non-REM sleep arousal disorders. Now, these are relatively new DSM-5 diagnosis, and these are what we call the night terrors or sleep terrors and sleepwalking. Now, with the sleep terrors, these are the recurrent episodes of panic-like symptoms during a non-REM sleep. Whereas with sleepwalking, we have seen someone who had been sleepwalking. I think in our history of our in the history of our lives, I'm not sure in your case kung ano, alam niyo yan. And usually when you ask them na parang na-remember mo ba naglalakad ka kagabi ganto or sasabihin mo sa kanila, naalala mo nag-ano kayo sumigaw ka kagabi ganto. Sabi niya hindi. So, ah, hindi niya naalala yon yung nangyari na yon sa kanya. So, usually, this sleep terrors, it's more common about children than adults. And during that time, they cannot be easily awakened. Although nagsisigaw na sila or although nagpapakita na sila ng takot, they are not still awake at that time. And then, ayun, they have very little memory of it during the next day. Now, with the sleepwalking disorder or the somnambulism, this occurs during the non-REM sleep. And then, usually during the first few hours of deep sleep, and the person tends to leave the bed. And then this is also uh, more common in children than in adults, and usually the problem resolves itself without any treatment. And the sleepwalking disorders usually seem to run in the families. There are instances that it may be accompanied by nocturnal eating. So just like with the, yung weightlifting, Kim Bok-ju, yun nga yung roommate ni Bok-ju, yung gymnast, nung na-stress siya sa pagda-diet niya, yun, nag-sleepwalk siya to the point na yung pag-sleepwalk niya umabot hanggang ref nung dorm, tas kumakain siya. Kinakain niya kung ano yung nandun sa loob ng ref without really being awake. So that's a good presentation of the sleepwalking disorder. Same with my cousin. So the same cousin who gave me the laxative before, she had sleepwalking periods when we were younger. Nandun kami sa kabilang bahay, yung bahay na may 4 na floors. Yung fourth floor, at that time, wala pa siyang grills. So, parang pagdungaw mo, beranda kagad. Tapos, if you hang half of your body there, ayan, pwede kang tumilapon sa baba. So, patay ka, basically. So, one time that we agreed to have a sleepover, lahat kami magpipinsan. Sabi namin doon kami sa 4th floor matulog after parang movie marathon. Maya-maya, yung isa namin pinsan, bigla siyang tumayo. Tapos sabi namin, Ding, saan ka pupunta, Ding? Hindi niya kami sinasagot. Tapos, parang pumunta rin yata siya sa ref. May tinignan yata siya sa ref. So, akala namin, parang nagutom lang siya na tumayo dahil nagutom siya, and then dahil nagutom siya, medyo cranky siya, kaya hindi niya kami sinasagot. However, na-alarm kami dahil nga dire-diretso siya papunta na ng beranda. And then we were trying to really call her name, and then my cousin who's in the veranda was waving his hands in front of her face, and then hindi siya nagbi-blink, as in wala siyang reaction. And then nung dudungaw na siya sa veranda, dun sa may railings ng veranda, ayun, buti hinigit ng pinsan ko yung damit niya pabalik. So dun lang siya nagising, kasi nga medyo malakas yung pagkakahigit sa kanya. So, it turns out that she was sleepwalking. So, yun, ang sleepwalking. Pretty much they are not really aware of that. And then, yun, when we asked her about it, kasi nga, nagising na siya nung hinigit siya nung pinsan naming isa. Sinabi namin, na alala mo kagabi naglalakad ka papuntang beranda. Tapos sabi niya, ano yun? Hindi ko alam. So, wala talaga siya idea kung bakit niya ginawa yan. But, after that, parang there were few instances pa. But, after that, parang nawala na naman siya later on. And then, to summarize all of them, ayan, sleep-wake disorders share usually interference with normal sleep processes. And also, the interference usually results to problems during waking up. And the cause of this is usually because of psychological and behavioral factors. Aside from that, the incidence of eating and sleep wake disorders have also been increasing, particularly with sleep disorders, especially with children, kasi ang nakikita nga nila with the current studies and the literature about this is that dumadami na rin ang stressors ng mga bata. So that's why a lot of children have been experiencing sleep terrors as well. And then, in terms of the treatments, ayan, mas kailangan pa ng more effective treatment for eating and sleep-wake disorders aside from the prevention as well. So, thank you so much, guys, for listening to this discussion of sleep-wake disorders, chapter 8. So, please stand by for the next chapter, which is chapter 9.